Hi everybody, this is Caroline from Socanchi, and I just wanted to pop in and update you with the new method and pattern that I'm using to make my face masks. It's been a few months now since we all made our first round of face masks. Maybe you never stopped making them, good for you. But recently I needed to make some new face masks because the ones that our family had were just getting old and getting lost. And I found on Amazon these really cool little elastics that have the little adjuster here to make them bigger or smaller. And besides the adjuster, they're made out of like a stretch fabric that's in a little tube, and they're super soft and super comfortable behind our ears. So when I started making these, I made one first for myself and my husband took it. And so then I needed to make another one for myself and for the kids because they really like it. So I'll put a link in this space below where you can buy these little elastics or straps. The package that I bought was super inexpensive and it came with both black and white. And since you know that I make most of my masks out of fabrics left over from the quilts that I make, the masks still cost me next to nothing. So in order to come up with this new little design, I had to reshape the template that I was using. So I put it together for you in 5 different sizes. And for myself, I am cutting it out for the medium adult size face mask, and it's just perfect for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you really quick some tips and tricks for putting this together, just in case you want to see me do it. This is it. So let's go ahead. I have already cut out 4 pieces from the template. I cut out 2 were in reverse, and what I did is I just placed my fabrics right sides together and I cut out 2, and then I moved my template over and I cut out 2 more using the template. So because of that, my pieces are all ready, right sides together here, and they are ready for me to stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead here and move my camera down so you can see what I'm doing on the sewing machine. All right, so I've got my sewing machine set up here with a stitch length of about 3. And I'm going to get started sewing my pieces that are already right sides together. Here's just a little tip. I'm going to start by sewing over a piece of fabric that is folded up, little scrap. I have already sewn over this many times, so it's probably time for me to start a new leader. But this little scrap that's called a leader will just help me so that the beginning part where I start sewing right here, it's just a little point, and sometimes little points like this like to get stuck down in your feed dogs, and then you have a frustrating time getting started. So I sewed over my leader here, and now I'm just going to start sewing over the face mask with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'll back stitch a little bit, and now I'm just going to sew around the seam here. I'm starting by sewing around the curved seam in the center of the face mask, and these 2 sets are exactly the same. One will be my exterior and one will be my lining, but they're exactly the same. So I'm just going to sew around, and I'm going to back stitch here, but I'm not going to cut stitches. I'm just going to sew the next 2 together. This is called chain piecing. We do it on quilts. And because this is still in the sewing machine, it will help me. I won't need a leader to start the next piece. So I sew a couple stitches, back stitch, and then sew around this curve. And then I'm going to back stitch to end. Okay. And now I will go ahead and cut off my leader off the beginning, and I'm going to cut my 2 pieces apart. And now if you want your face masks to be really nice and professional, you can go ahead and press them. See here, I've got this piece, which could be the exterior or the interior, and another piece that's exactly the same. And right here, where it curves out a little more, is the top. That's where the nose goes. So I'm going to set mine both here, right in front of me with the nose part up, and this one too. And now I'm going to take one of my little straps, and I'll start with this one right here. I'm just going to place my little straps so that the end of the strap is against the short edge, and it's about 1/4 of an inch away from the corner, just like that. And you can pin these if you like, but since I'm always in a hurry, I'm just going to go ahead and sew across this short edge with a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance so that the stitching won't show later. And I'm going to catch these two ends of my little strap right there. Okay, now just so that I don't get stuck, I'll go ahead and use my leader. And then I'm going to start. Now this is kind of fiddly. I don't want my little piece of face mask strap to move, so I've got my little sewing stiletto here that I can use just to hold it in place so my sewing machine will sew over it. Now I could break stitches and come over here and then sew this one, but honestly I think it's faster just to sew all the way across. And then make sure this one is right where I want it. And I sewed across. So without taking this out of the sewing machine, you can see that I sewed the ends of my little strap onto one of the short ends. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on my other piece. And this might not make sense at first, but I'm going to sew it the exact same way. Here's the top. Here's the top of this one right here. And I'm going to take another little white strap and I'm going to do it exactly the same. Now your exterior fabrics and your lining fabrics might be different, but what I'm trying to point out is that I'm not going to sew it over on this side because when I put them right sides together, it will all turn out perfectly. So I'm going to sew it in the exact same spot as I did before. Now, if you want to take this out of the sewing machine, then you can go ahead and you can sew your other strap on the other side of the same piece. But I'm just trying to show you here a little speed method of how you can just keep it in the sewing machine and keep going. You can buzz right through these and you can make 10 in an hour. So I'm going to put this under my sewing machine and I'll use my little stiletto to make sure that this little strap is right where I want him to be. Sew over him. And then I'm just going to keep sewing down until I get to where I want the other strap to be. And I'm going to stick him under. Okay. Use my sewing stiletto to make sure that it's just where I want it to be. Okay, 1/4 inch away from the corner and sew over that. Now I'm cutting threads. If I wasn't talking, I would have been already done by now. So I'll cut these apart and I'll cut off my little leader. And you see that I'll have two pieces that have the little straps sewn on the exact same side. But that means, okay, I'm setting this up here with the top here, the nose piece, and I turn them right sides together with the nose pieces kind of nested in each other like this. And look at that, I've got my straps on opposite sides of my face mask. So now I'm just going to take a few pins here and just pin my face mask together. So at this point, I'm just placing a few pins because I want to make sure that my pieces are all lined up and that these little face mask straps do not get caught in my seams. So my pins are also here on the very ends and they just kind of serve to hold them out of the way. But I'm going to watch them as I sew anyway to make sure they don't get caught. If you like, you can also place some pins here at the top and at the bottom, and of course you can also press as you go. So the next step is we are just going to sew all the way around this little face mask, except down here at the bottom on one side, I am just going to leave about 2 inches open for turning the face mask right side out later. So I'll start sewing about right here, and then I'll sew down and around, all the way around and stop about right here, 2 inches away from where I started. And one little tip that you can do is you sew over the seam in the middle in order to reduce bulk and also make your seams match up, is just to nest these two little seams, make one go one way and one go the other way. In quilting, we call that nesting. So just gonna start sewing about right here. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance because I know that using 1/4 inch seam allowance on this size medium, adult medium face mask is going to fit perfectly on me. I could make it a little smaller by using 3/8 inch or 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then it will be a little smaller. But this medium size fits me and my teenage daughters perfectly, so I really like it. I'm just gonna keep sewing around. 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I can just make sure that this little strap stays just where I want him to be. Here I'm coming to my other seam. I'm going to nest the center seams. Oh, my seam allowance got kind of big right there. Oh well. Face masks are so forgiving because nobody can tell when you've got it on your face if you sewed it perfectly or not. All right, I'm on the last side here, and now I'm about 2 inches away from where I started, so I will backstitch and cut threads. I'll use some scissors here to just trim a little bit away from each corner. I don't want to trim too much. It's not going to matter a lot, and I don't want to cut the stitching, of course. So I just trim that a little bit. And now I'll turn my face mask right side out. One nice thing about having these ties is it's really easy to pull your corners out. So at this point, I am going to go over to my ironing board and I am going to gently press it to help me press all of these edges out. And of course, at the opening here, I'm going to tuck my little seam allowances in by 1/4 inch and press that. It actually looks pretty nice already. But I will go over to the ironing board and press it up just a little bit, and then I'll be right back to top stitch. It really doesn't matter where we start, and if you like, you can only top stitch along the bottom edge where you left your opening. You could just top stitch once across the bottom edge. You could top stitch just where the opening is if you're really in a hurry. I'm just going to top stitch all the way around this. It makes a nice finish, and then nobody knows where my opening was. So I will start right here. You can use your tie to help you pull a little bit if things get stuck at the beginning. And let's just go. And this is where I started, so I'm just going to backstitch a little bit over the place where I began. And cut stitches. I can adjust the little ties like this. And then as you can see, this medium size with the adjustable ties, it fits me just about perfectly. So I hope you guys are all staying safe and finding ways to stay sane. Keep sewing. I'm going to leave a link to my blog post where you can find all these templates for free on my blog, sewcanshe.com. If you like this video or you think it will help someone else learn how to make face masks or make face masks using these adjustable straps, please share this tutorial so we can all stay safe. Happy sewing!